If you need to pass GED RLA, know that I made this video with tips, tricks, and strategies and practice questions to help you get a better score with GED RLA and to pass it faster. And I know that you're probably getting sick and tired of studying for the GED, and you probably are ready to just move ahead and get this behind you and get on to whatever's coming next for you, whether that's another job, going to school for something, whatever it happens to be. I can certainly understand that, and I'm here to help you move ahead. So let's get started. West of Arkham, the hills rise wild, and there are valleys with deep woods that no axe has ever cut. There are dark, narrow glens where the trees slope fantastically and where thin brooklets trickle without ever having caught the glint of sunlight. Which of the following is the best inference from the passage above? A. Few, if any, people live in valleys west of Arkham. B. There is a big city west of Arkham. Or C. The narrator is trapped in the woods. So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need to reread this if you have to, and whenever you're ready, just unpause the video and we'll talk about it. Okay, so the correct answer here is A. Few, if any, people live in the valleys west of Arkham. Now, an inference is an educated guess that you make based on the info and the story and also your own experience. So here, if nobody has ever used an axe before in that area, they probably haven't cleared out the forest, right? So if there was a big city there, you would have to clear out that forest. You'd have to take an axe or some other means and have people go through and clear out that valley, right, so that there could be a big city. But we don't see that here, right? Because it says that there are valleys with deep woods that no axe has ever cut. All right. So also see, we are talking about woods and trees and stuff like that here, but we don't really see any evidence that the main character here, the narrator, is trapped in the woods. So that's why C is incorrect here. And A is the correct answer here. And so let's move on to the next part of the passage here. On the gentler slopes, there are farms, ancient and rocky, with squat, moss-coated cottages brooding eternally over old New England secrets in the lee of great ledges. But these are all vacant now, the wide chimneys crumbling and the shingled sides bulging perilously beneath low gambrel roofs. And I think that word is pronounced gambrel. A lot of the passages on your test will probably be, at least some of them are going to be like kind of older English style passages, and some students say that throws them off. So in these videos, I try to use stories that are going to be kind of like an old English style to just give you some practice with that. So if I mispronounce words, it's because some of these words are stuff that we just don't really say very often today in everyday language. You can expect to get some more modern passages on your test too, I would say, but generally you'll also get some kind of older style writing. But the question here is, what is most likely the setting of this story? So there aren't any multiple choice answers for this. This is just for you to pause the video, think about it, take all the time you need to reread this if you need to, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So one of the most important skills for fiction, and this can also apply to nonfiction depending on the passage, is figuring out the setting. And the setting is where the story takes place, and it can also be when, like what time of day, is it night, is it evening, and the setting can often change throughout the story. So this is really one of the keys to understanding fiction. Sometimes when you get in there to that test and you've got long passages to read and you've got confusing questions and you've got that time ticking down, it can cause a lot of stress. And, sometimes people will go in and they'll kind of panic as that timer ticks down, which is really easy to do. Not saying that's going to happen to you, but it can happen. And so just going in with a strategy, once you start reading, think, what is the setting of the story? All right. That can often help you to avoid kind of panicking, just coming in with some kind of strategy. So I would always recommend whenever you're reading something, one of the first things you want to look for is what the setting is, just so you can determine that. And also note where the setting changes, right? Like if, for example, part of the story is set on a farm, and then part of the story is set in the city. All right, if the characters go to the city and you're still picturing what's happening as being on the farm, all right, you can hopefully see why that would be a little bit confusing and hard to understand. All right, so it's important to note where that setting changes. And also, so let's look at the answer here. So basically, here we know that this is somewhere in New England near Arkham, right? The west of Arkham, the hills rise wild is what it said in the first sentence of the passage here. And so basically, as long as you got something like this in New England near Arkham, you could have also wrote kind of in the woods or wilderness. Whatever you wrote here, just as long as you got something like this, then I'm sure you got the right answer. Okay. No one likes to live there. It is not because of anything that can be seen or heard or handled, but because of something that is imagined. The place is not good for the imagination and does not bring restful dreams at night. It must be this which keeps the others away, for old Ami Pierce has never told them of anything he recalls from the strange days. Ami, whose head has been a little strange for years, is the only one who still remains or who ever talks of the strange days. And he dares to do this because his house is so near the open fields and the traveled roads around Arkham. Please identify the character introduced in this paragraph and come up with one word to remember him. So now is your chance to pause the video, take all the time you need, and you can reread this, spend all the time you need on this, and whenever you're ready, just unpause the video and we'll talk about it. Okay, so hopefully you saw that the character here is Ami, which I've highlighted here. And one word to describe him, you're obviously going to have something different than what I put here, but, some ideas could be strange, alone, stubborn, knowledgeable. And the reason I had you do this is one strategy that I teach, and you're free to use this if you don't think this will work for you, or you're free to discard it, but I think it's important to at least give you this tip here. One good strategy is to try to come up with one word, or it could be maybe a couple words to describe each character. And if you can make it visual or something that you can easily visualize, that's even better. And let me give you an example of what I mean. So let's say that a character is a doctor, all right? You could say, hey, that character is a doctor. See how that gives you a clear picture of who that person is? Or maybe the character is a taxi driver or an Uber driver. Well, actually, you're probably not going to have an Uber driver in a passage, right? Because the passages are probably going to be a little bit older and will probably have came out before Uber. But anyway, let's say a character is a taxi driver, right? If I say someone's a taxi driver, doesn't that give you kind of a clear picture of, can't you picture that easily? Maybe you can't. But the point here is that, think of one word for the character, and if you can make it something visual that's easy to picture, that's even better. And this is really going to make more sense to use this strategy, especially in cases when you've got a bunch of different characters in a story, which is often going to be the case, all right? So not being able to tell the characters apart while you're reading, that can be one source of confusion and challenge for reading comprehension tests, like the RLA section of the GED. So this is just one strategy you're free to use if you want. And just note here that when it comes to characters, really going in with a strategy that you want to think of a way to tell the characters apart, and that's going to help. There are going to be main characters and supporting characters in a lot of passages. Another quick tip I can give you here is that main characters are like the main people in the story, and supporting characters might just come into the story briefly. They'll serve some purpose and then they'll leave. And you're typically going to be asked more questions on the main characters than supporting characters. So a main character you'll probably want to pay closer attention to, but you can get questions on supporting characters too. It just depends on what version of the test you get. Because the tests are randomized. But basically, one method that I teach is what I call the SCCT method here: setting, characters, conflict, and theme. Now, really, the first two are the most important here. And as I've already said, figuring out what the setting is really important, and then identifying who the characters are and kind of thinking about how you can tell the characters apart, and also looking at how the characters interact with each other, what's happening to the characters in the story. That's really going to help your reading comprehension. So again, this is a method here that I like to give people so that you at least have kind of a strategy when you go into the test. Because like I said, it's easy to sit there and get overwhelmed as the time ticks down, but if that starts happening, just kind of ask, what is the setting? Where is the story taking place? Who are the characters? And if you can focus on the setting and the characters, sometimes the conflict and theme will kind of jump right out at you. So that's just another tip here. There was once a road over the hills and through the valleys that ran straight where the blasted heath is now. But people ceased to use it, and a new road was laid, curving far toward the south. Traces of the old one can still be found amidst the weeds of a returning wilderness, and some of them will doubtless linger even when half the hollows are flooded for the new reservoir. Which of the following is true? A. The new road was laid curving over the hills and through the valleys. B. There are no signs remaining to indicate where the old road was. C. Once the new reservoir is complete, no one will see signs of the old road, or D, none of the above. So now's your chance to pause the video, and you can reread this and take all the time that you need. I know sometimes I do read kind of fast, so take all the time you need to reread this, and whenever you're ready, just unpause it, and we will go over the answer. So when we think about A here, right, it tells us in the passage, the new road was laid curving far toward the south. So we can rule A out here. So what about B? Well, it tells us that traces of the old one, meaning the road, can still be found. So I'd also say that B is not true here. What about C? Well, it tells us that some of the traces of the old road will doubtless linger even when it's flooded after the new reservoir, right? So basically, even after there's a new reservoir and the area is flooded, okay, it says that some of them will doubtless linger, meaning some of the roads will still be there. All right, so really none of these are true, which leaves us with D, none of the above. If you got that right, great work. If not, hopefully it makes sense why D is the answer. Otherwise, let me know down below in the comments. I'm happy to discuss it further. Then the dark woods will be cut down and the blasted heath will slumber far below blue waters whose surface will mirror the sky and ripple in the sun. And the secrets of the strange days will be one with the deep secrets, one with the hidden lore of old ocean and all the mystery of primal earth. The word lore most likely means which of the following? A. A collection of traditions and knowledge on a subject typically passed on by word of mouth. B. An item used to attract a fish. Or C. A device used to dig a hole into the ground. So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so the correct answer here is A. A collection of traditions and knowledge on a subject typically passed on by word of mouth. Sometimes if you look at movie series like Star Wars, all right, there's Star Wars lore. If you look at video games like The Legend of Zelda, there's a lore around like the Zelda timeline. And if you don't like Star Wars or Zelda, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But, maybe you could think of an example of some other series or something out there that has lore to it. B, that seems like it's talking about the word lure, meaning spelled L-U-R-E, not lore here. But A is the best answer here, and really, one tip that I want you to take away from this question here is that if you have to ever guess on a question, I would try to pick the longest answer choice. And let me explain why this is going to be true. Now, obviously, hopefully you won't have to guess, right? It's always better to just use logic and common sense to try to get the answer that way. But if you ever do have to guess and you're just completely stumped, I would try to pick the longest and most specific answer, all right? Like if we look at this question here, see how B is kind of short and C is kind of short, but A is kind of long and detailed, all right? This happens sometimes because, at least this is what I think, and this is what I believe, is that when test writers write the test, okay, they'll put one answer choice in that's the right answer. It's very long and specific, but then they just they don't really try that hard or put that much effort into the other answer choices. They just kind of want to get home and get their paycheck. So they'll just, when they have to make up the junk answer choices, like the bogus answer choices like B and C, they don't really put that much effort into them half the time, which is why they end up just kind of being short and not detailed. And so sometimes you can, see cases like this where there's one really long answer choice and the rest are short. Now, this isn't guaranteed to be correct, all right? This could be wrong, right? There's no guarantee, but if you have to guess and you've got nothing else to go off of, that's what I would do, pick that longest answer choice, simply for the reason that the writers often put more time into that, and then when they have to make up the fake answer choices, sometimes they don't care that much. But anyway. When I went into the hills and vales to survey for the new reservoir, they told me the place was evil. They told me this in Arkham, and because that is a very old town full of legends, I thought the evil must be something which grandparents had whispered to children throughout centuries. The name Blasted Heath seemed to me very odd and theatrical, and I wondered how it had come into the folklore of a Puritan people. What is the point of view of the story? Is it A, first person, B, second person, or C, third person? So now, as always, is your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so the correct answer here is first person. Now, your clue to first person is going to be the letter I here, right? It says, when I went into the hills, full of legends, I thought the evil. and I wondered. All right, so that would be your clue that is in first person. Okay, so the letter I kind of looks like the number 1, right? So that can be a way to remember that. First person, the letter I and the number 1 kind of look alike. Or maybe you don't think so. But anyway, first person view, I is going to be your giveaway. For second person, the giveaway is going to be you. So it would say, when you went into the hills. Or it could say something like, legends you thought the evil. Or, and you wondered how it had come into the folklore. So two rhymes with you. Maybe that helps you remember that second person is going to be associated with that word you. All right, so for third person here, third person would be a character, right? Like it could say, when Ethan went into the hills, or because that is a very old town full of legends, Ethan thought the evil must be something. Or, and Ethan wondered, blah, blah, blah. Ethan went to the village to search for Rose. Something like that, all right? Third person is going to be like an actual character here, okay? So at the start of the story, when it was kind of talking about Ami, it kind of seemed like this was going to be a third person story. But then we got to this part here where it's using the word I, so this clues us in that it is told from the first person perspective. So this video's champion shoutout goes to a test taker who says, "Thank you for all the videos and for helping people study and pass their tests. I have 2 sons who are 3 years old and 6 weeks old, and thanks to you, I know they can grow up to be proud of me for finishing this chapter of my life and graduating. Thank you for helping me move on to bigger and better things. I hope all goes well for the people who are still in need of passing their GED. You got this. Take your time and study and you will pass." I love this comment because helping people move ahead to bigger and better things is really what Test Prep Champions is all about, and I know there's a lot of people out there that are still working hard and it still hasn't happened for them yet, and if you're watching this, maybe that's you. Just know that if you keep working hard, keep working smart, and keep persevering, someday you're going to get done. So throughout this video, I'll be using a method known as closed tasks, or some call it closed deletions, and I don't expect you to read this. This is just a slide showing that there is research and evidence that backs up this method as being useful for helping with reading comprehension. So again, you don't have to read this. This is just kind of demonstrating that there is kind of a method I have behind the madness here, although it might not seem like it. Then I saw that dark westward tangle of glens and slopes for myself, and ceased to wonder at anything besides its own mystery. It was morning when I saw it, but shadow lurked always there. The trees grew too thickly, and their trunks were too big for any healthy New England blank. There was too much silence in the dim alleys between them, and the floor was too soft in the dank moss and mattings of infinite years of decay. Which word most likely fits in the blank above? Is it A, pond? Is it B, wood? Is it C, bridge? Or is it D, kitchen? So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so the correct answer here is B, wood. And if you kind of look at the sentence here, it's talking about trees. It says they grew too thickly and their trunks were big. So hopefully that would kind of be a clue here that wood would be the right answer here. Italian sub or ham and cheese? I'm taking the Italian. Jello or pudding? Ooh, I'm stumped. Marvel or DC Comics? I do like Batman, which would be DC, but I'd say overall Marvel. Friends or Seinfeld? I'm going to take Seinfeld. So we'll keep moving. It says, but even all this was not so bad as the blasted heath. I knew it the moment I came upon it at the bottom of a spacious valley, for no other name could fit such a thing, or any other thing fit such a name. It was as if the poet had coined the phrase from having seen this one particular region. It must, I thought, as I viewed it, be the outcome of a fire, but why had nothing new ever grown over those 5 acres of gray desolation that sprawled open to the sky like a great spot eaten by acid in the woods and fields? So in your own words, please explain what you think the blasted heath is. And by the time you're done watching this video, you're probably going to be tired of hearing about this blasted heath. But now's your chance to pause the video, reread this if you need to, just put in your own words, what do you think this is? All right. Okay, so hopefully you had a chance to try this. Now, I'll admit this is kind of confusing actually, and when I was first reading this story, to put this video together, I actually was kind of confused about what this was. So if you weren't 100% sure, don't feel bad about it. But basically, it's kind of the way I see it, it's a damaged part of the land where no new plants are growing. If you had a different take on this or thought it was something else, then just comment down below. I'd be interested in hearing what you thought here. But this is basically, generally what's speaking here. It's kind of a part of the land. It looks like, as it says in the text, it must, I thought, as I viewed it, be the outcome of a fire. So it looks kind of like there was a fire, a part of the land was damaged, but nothing new can grow there. And it also says there's 5 acres of gray desolation. So the land is 5 acres long where this is going on. It says gray desolation that sprawled open to the sky, like a great spot. So it almost looks too like the sky is open here. Like it looks like the sun could shine down and let plants grow, except we don't see any growth there. So it's really just kind of a damaged part of the land where no plants are growing. That's kind of how I saw this. Let me know down below if you saw something else. It lay largely to the north of the ancient road line, but encroached a little on the other side. I felt an odd reluctance about approaching, and did so at last only because my business took me through and past it. There was no vegetation of any kind on that broad expanse, but only a fine gray dust or ash which no wind seemed ever to blow about. 9. Which of the following is true? A. The blasted heath lay largely south of the ancient road line. B. The narrator couldn't wait to approach the blasted heath. C. The blasted heath had many plant species growing in it. Or D. None of the above. So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so D, none of the above is correct here. All right, and so basically, the blasted heath lay largely south of the ancient road line. Well, kind of tells us here it lay largely north in the opening sentence here, so that's why we would rule that out. What about B? The narrator couldn't wait to approach the blasted heath. Well, it tells us here, I felt an odd reluctance about approaching. So if you're reluctant to approach something, right, the opposite would be enthusiastic, right? So if the narrator couldn't wait to approach it, all right, that seems like that clashes with the sentence. I felt an odd reluctance about approaching, so that's why B is wrong. Now it says the blasted heath had many plant species growing in it. Well, it comes out and says there was no vegetation of any kind on that broad expanse. So that would take C out here, leaving us with D, none of the above. The trees near it were sickly and stunted, and many dead trunks stood or lay rotting at the rim. As I walked hurriedly by, I saw the tumbled bricks and stones of an old blank, and cellar on my right, and the yawning maw of an abandoned well whose stagnant vapors played strange tricks with the hues of the sunlight. Which of the following words most likely fits in the blank above? Is it A, chimney, B, zoo, C, car, or D, table? Now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So here it's chimney, and really, I think to get this right, you would need to see, I saw the tumbled bricks and stones of an old blank. So does a car have bricks and stones? Not any car that I've seen. A table, I guess, could have bricks and stones, but probably more likely what we're talking about here is the chimney. I don't really see tables made out of brick and stone, but I guess it could be. But anyway. Even the long dark woodland climb beyond seemed welcome in contrast, and I marveled no more at the frightened whispers of Arkham people. There had been no house or ruin near, even in the old days. The place must have been lonely and remote, and at twilight dreading to repass the ominous spot, I walked circuitously back to the town by a curving road on the south. I vaguely wished some clouds would gather, for an odd timidity about the deep sky voids above had crept into my soul. I'm not even sure how to pronounce that. I think that's right. Please state in your own words how you think the main character feels about the blasted heath. And you could do this in like maybe 1 to 3 sentences only. You can do this in your head or you can write it down on paper, but I'm about to explain why this is an important practice to do anyway. But let's have you try this out. And, there isn't really a right or wrong answer here. Just try to think about what the text says here and try to do this in your own words. So basically, you could say something like this. He's scared, he's creeped out, He's also no longer surprised by the stories he's heard, right? So he heard all kinds of stories and frightened whispers of people at Arkham, and it says, I marveled no more at them, right? So maybe at one point he marveled or he wondered or was surprised by them, but now that he's seen for himself, he's scared, he's creeped out, right? It says here, one piece of evidence for that is where it says, I can't even say that word. I walked circuitously back to the town by the curving road on the south. So that kind of means that instead of walking at least what I interpret that as meaning is that instead of taking the shortest possible path back, all right, he kind of walked in like a circuit, or he kind of walked a long way just so that he could get away from the area, just to get out of that area. That's what I take that to mean, at least. And basically, it's just saying here, I vaguely wish some clouds would gather, for an odd timidity about the deep skyey voids above had crept into my soul. All right, it also says here that at twilight, dreading to repass that ominous spot, meaning like he didn't want to repass it. So, he's scared. He doesn't want to go past it. He's dreading it. And so anyway. In the evening, I asked old people in Arkham about the blasted heath and what was meant by the phrase strange days, which so many evasively muttered. I could not, however, get any good answers except that all the mystery was much more recent than I had dreamed. It was not a matter of old legendary at all, but something within the lifetime of those who spoke. Please summarize this paragraph in your own words in 1 to 3 sentences. You can do this in your head or do it on a paper. You can write it down below. But this is an important practice for a variety of reasons. So let's have you try this now. Okay, so obviously that would be like a 1 in a million chance that you came up with exactly what I wrote here. But this is, as long as you have something along these lines, you probably consider that you got the right answer. So basically what I'm getting is that the narrator asked people in Arkham about the blasted heath. He got a few answers, but really learned that the mystery happened more recently than he thought. So he didn't really get any good answers here, right? It says, however, he couldn't get any good answers, so maybe he got some information. But what he did learn was that, maybe he thought that the mystery happened like hundreds of years ago, but he learns that no, it actually happened more recently. And so this is kind of, as long as you have something kind of like this, all right, you could have, there's different directions that you could have gone with this, but as long as you have something like this, then you consider that you got the question right here. So let me now talk about a reading comprehension strategy called rap paraphrasing, and I did not come up with this by any means at all. This is a strategy by Shoemaker, Denton, and Deschler, and this strategy has many benefits. It can help boost memory and recall. It can help raise your understanding of the text, and it's also simple and efficient to use. So the R in rap stands for read the paragraph, which you've been doing obviously throughout this video. The A says ask what's the main idea and what are 2 supporting ideas. And I'll come back to this in a moment. And the P stands for put it in your own words. And we've been practicing with the P for the last couple questions now. And basically, that second step is ask what's the main idea and 2 supporting ideas. So if you're not sure what a main idea is, the main idea is just the main point of the paragraph. It's usually found in one sentence. But not always, and sometimes repetition of words or ideas can cue you into what that main idea is. And a really good way to figure out what the main idea is to kind of read a passage or a paragraph and think, if I had to title this, what title would I give it? So if this paragraph or passage was a book or a movie, what would the title be? That's kind of a question that can help you kind of cue in on what that main idea is. So you might get a question on the test that asks you what is the main idea. In fact, that comes up quite commonly. So here are some bullet points that hopefully this helps get you going in the right direction as far as figuring out the main idea. And main ideas are different from supporting ideas. So supporting ideas support that main idea. So the main idea is the table. The supporting idea is the legs. And, these can be specific facts or details, things like that. Examples, okay. But anyway, when it comes to the rap paraphrasing strategy, again, R is read the paragraph, A, ask what's the main idea and 2 supporting ideas, and P, put it in your own words. And if nothing else, what you can take away from this is that P, putting things in your own words, is a really good way to boost reading comprehension. So sometimes on your test, as you're reading, you're going to focus on the setting, you're going to focus on the characters. So it doesn't hurt to just pause every now and then and ask yourself in your head, how could I explain this? Do I understand this? How could I put this in my own words, right? So I'm sure you might have had an experience before where maybe you watched a TV show and then, you saw your friend the next day and your friend didn't see the TV show. And so you explain what happened in the TV show. All right. That's putting something in your own words. That's summarizing. Okay. And so anyway, I just wanted us to get some practice in with this, but if nothing else, just take away that putting things in your own words, it's a really important strategy for not just boosting your reading comprehension and helping improve your reading comprehension, but also for helping you understand and just process the text on a deeper level here. So, you might not have time while you're reading to pause every paragraph and go through the RAP method, all right, but maybe you'll have time to just pause and just ask yourself, how can I put this in my own words from time to time as you're reading, all right? That shouldn't add too much extra time to your test, and it very well could help you comprehend the test better. So just something to think about here. But anyway, it had happened in the 80s, and a family had disappeared or was killed. Speakers would not be exact, and because they all told me to pay no attention to old Ami Pierce's crazy tales, I sought him out the next morning, having heard that he lived blank in the ancient tottering cottage where the trees first begin to get very thick. Which word most likely fits in the blank above? Is it A, together? Is it B, alone? Is it C, collectively? Or is it D, conjointly? So now's your chance to pause the video and try to figure this out. And whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So one thing here to notice is that one word is unlike the others. Okay, so this is another strategy sometimes for guessing on questions, and hopefully you didn't have to guess on this one, but I'm just want to make a point here that, sometimes if you see one word that's unlike the others, that might be the one you want to guess, all right? So the words together and collectively kind of mean the same thing here, right? If he lived together, that would be like he lived with somebody else or with other people. If he lived collectively, that would kind of sound like he's living with other people, all right? Same with conjointly. All right, so together, collectively, conjointly are all kinds of ways of saying essentially the same thing. But alone is different, right? If you're living collectively, that means you're probably living with at least one other person. If you're living alone, that means you're alone, right? So anyway, B is unlike the other answer choices here, so that can sometimes be a clue that that one is correct. But if you just kind of think about it here too, just using the clues here, all right, in just using the clues and what we know here, that could also be a way to come up with B as the correct answer here. And B is the correct answer here. Sorry for rambling. But anyway, hopefully that makes sense.
Tommy, as soon as you're done playing with that 7-Eleven bag, maybe you can teach a lesson here.
It was a fearsomely archaic place, and had begun to exude the faint odor which clings about houses that have stood too long. Only with persistent knocking could I rouse the man, and when he shuffled timidly to the door, I could tell he was not glad to see me. He was not so feeble as I had expected, but his eyes drooped in a curious way, and his unkempt clothing and beard made him seem very worn and dismal. Which three adjectives best describe Ami based on the information above? Is it A, welcoming, weak, and happy? B, tired, timid, and disorderly? C, tired, feeble, social? Or D, lively, disorderly, and timid? So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So adjectives are simply put descriptive words describing a person or a thing. And if we talk about A here, if we look at A, it says, think about it this way, it tells us in the story that he was not glad to see him. So if he's not glad to see him, is he welcoming? Well, no, he isn't welcoming, right? So we can't really say he's welcoming if you can tell that he was not glad to see the main character. So I would take A out based off of that. Now B, timid, tired, and disorderly. Well, that could be the correct answer here. Let's come back to that. What about C? C says tired, feeble, and social. So he's definitely tired, right? And we know that he's tired, or we could assume that because it took persistent knocking to rouse him, meaning he had to knock a lot to wake Ami up here. So we would assume that he's tired. That would make sense. But what about feeble? Well, it says he was not so feeble as I had expected. Okay, so if the person thought he was going to be feeble and it turned out that he wasn't as feeble as he thought he was going to be, Probably feeble is not going to be the best word to describe him, but the icing on the cake for taking C out is social, all right? We know that Ami lives by himself. He's not excited to see the person at all, so we can't say that he's social, so I would take C out. Now D, lively, disorderly, and timid. Well, it tells us that he shuffled timidly to the door, so timid would make sense. And disorderly, we see that it tells us that his clothing is unkempt and so is his beard. So, that means he's kind of disordered, right? So disorderly could make sense here. But I wouldn't say lively is a good way to describe him because he had to have the main character knock on the door a bunch of times to get him out of bed. So I wouldn't really say he's very lively here. So when all is said and done, B is the last answer standing here. And for reasons I've highlighted here, all right, on the screen here. Not knowing just how he could best be launched on his tales, I feigned a matter of business, told him of my surveying, and asked vague questions about the district. He was far brighter and more educated than I had been led to think, and before I knew it had grasped quite as much of the subject as any man I had talked with in Arkham. He was not like other rustics I had known in the sections where reservoirs were to be. The word feigned most likely means which of the following: A, prepared, B, pretended, C, laughed, or D, animal. Now is your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the correct answer here is pretended. So basically what's happening is the main character wants Ami to tell him about the mystery of the Heath thing, whatever it is, the blasted Heath, but he's not sure how to go about it, so he's kind of like pretending like, hey, Ami, I'm here to talk about business and my surveying, and he's kind of pretending that that's why he's there, all right? So feigned, pretended, all right, B is the correct answer here. For him, there were no protests at the miles of old wood and farmland to be blotted out, though perhaps there would have had not his home lain outside the bounds of the future lake. Relief was all that he shewed, relief at the doom of the dark ancient valleys through which he had roamed all his life. They were better under water now, better under water since the strange days, and with this opening his husky voice sank low, while his body leaned forward and his right forefinger began to point shakily and impressively. 16. Which of the following is correct? A, the area will be underwater once the reservoir is constructed and Ami is glad. B, the area will be underwater once the reservoir is constructed and Ami is upset. C, the area was once underwater, it should say area instead of R, and Ami is glad it is not now. So now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the correct answer here is that Ami's going to be relieved, right? So he's glad, he's relieved. It says that, once that valley is going to be underwater, all right, he's going to feel relief, right? It tells us in the highlighted text, relief was all that he shewed, relief at the doom of the dark ancient valleys through which he had roamed all his life. He's certainly not upset here, all right? And C, the area was once underwater and he's glad it is not now. Okay, that's not what the text really tells us here, all right? So A is the best answer here. It was then that I heard the story, and as the rambling voice scraped and whispered, so I shivered again and again despite the summer days. Often I had to recall the speaker from ramblings, piece out scientific points which he knew only by a fading parrot memory of professor's talk, or bridge over gaps where his sense of logic and continuity broke down. When he was done, I did not wonder what his mind had snapped a trifle, or that the folk of Arkham would not speak much of the blasted Heath. Now, I've heard about this blasted Heath so much today, I'm probably going to have nightmares about it tonight. I'm going to have nightmares about having to read about it so many times. Not that it's that scary. But anyway, so the question 17 is, which of the following best describes the narrator's reaction to Ami's story? A, the narrator believes Ami's story is unreliable, but he is still scared by the story. B, the narrator believes the townspeople are wrong about the blasted Heath. Or C, the narrator believes Ami's story is unreliable and is not scared by the story. So now's your chance to pause the video, take all the time you need with this, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So basically, it says that, at times when Ami was talking, the narrator had to bridge over gaps where his sense of logic and continuity broke down. It talks about pieced out scientific points which he only knew by a fading parrot memory. So there might be parts here that indicate that Ami's story is not fully reliable. All right. But that being said, it clearly still scares the narrator here, right? The main character, the narrator, it says that I shivered again and again despite the summer day. So if it's warm out and if it's warm out and the main character is shivering, all right, that means that he's probably scared by the story. Okay. So it says here, when he was done, I did not wonder that his mind had snapped a trifle or that the folk of Arkham would not speak much of the blasted heath. So B, the narrator believes the town people are wrong about the blasted heath. Well, basically it's saying the opposite. It's saying that after he was done hearing Ami's story about that blasted heath, it's basically saying that he understands why the people would not want to speak much about it. He didn't wonder about why they didn't want to talk about it. He now sees clearly why, so B is wrong. And so hopefully that makes sense that A is the correct answer here. I hurried back before sunset to my hotel, unwilling to have the stars come out above me in the open, and the next day returned to Boston to give up my position. I could not go into that dim chaos of old forest and slope again, or face another time that gray blasted heath where the black well yawned deep beside the tumbled bricks and stones. The reservoir will soon be built now, and all those elder secrets will be safe forever under watery fathoms. But even then, I do not believe I would like to visit that country by night, or at least not when the sinister stars are out, and nothing could bribe me to drink the new city water of Arkham. So 18. What is one way the narrator has changed from the beginning of the story? So now is your chance to pause the video. Think about this. You can write it down or do it in your head, and then we'll go over the answer. So I should have said that there isn't really just one answer here. This is kind of obviously a come up with your own answer. But so basically he quit his job, originally he had to go survey the land where the blasted heath was because they're going to put a reservoir or a lake there. And, now that he has gone and seen it for himself and heard Ami's story, he's just so terrified that he just quit his job and he just wants nothing to do with it anymore. So that blasted heath was just so horrifying that the narrator is just done. He quit his job. Sometimes they'll sneak a question in there about a picture, so don't ignore the pictures or the captions. If you're running out of time on RLA, one thing you can try is just reading the questions and then going and skimming the passages to try to find the answers without actually reading the passages. I'm convinced some of the questions are written to try to prevent you from doing that, but some of them you definitely can get right.